Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to A to Z Running. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the A to Z Running Podcast, where we help runners thrive. I'm Andi.
And I'm Zach, and this week's episode is fueled by chocolate sprinkled donut.
Delish.
Singularly, because there's only one of them here.
There are more.
I'm not
Zach.
eating it. There are? Well, maybe I
think
will
I'll be
eat
eating
one.
it then.
All right, so before you do anything else, head to AtoZrunning.com and look for the word follow in the corner so that you can subscribe and receive content that is free. And then, of course, on YouTube, you can also subscribe and click the little notification thing, ring the bell, as they like to say. And when you do that, then we will send our stuff directly to you wherever you have things like
That's pretty cool. Like
YouTube.
a virtual visit of sorts
Sure.
from the A to Z Running Pod.
Most importantly, though, we want to hear from you. We want comments and questions and things like that, because then we actually know you exist and you aren't just some robots clicking on the play button on things, which is a real thing. Actually, I should just find a way to do that, and then we can make it look like we have tons and tons of plays.
Well, that would be illegitimate, Zachary.
But no one else would know. So if you are real, you need to tell us so that we will believe it. And then you can post comments and questions. And really, we love the questions because then it gives us something more to talk about so that you don't just have to hear us talking about ourselves all the time.
We don't. Okay.
So we can talk about you. Like, we got a great comment and a question.
Yeah.
Actually, she posted twice. Two posts. One was a comment and then a question to follow from Laura.
Laura on the blog, she wrote, "You guys, literally I saw recovery in the title and almost skipped this episode, just like I always skip any type of effort requiring recovery stuff. But before I could scroll on to the next new episode in my podcast feed, I thankfully read the subtitle, which said, 'Recovery is when you gain fitness.'" Yeah, the bells went off for her.
Thank you for your candor, Laura. We appreciate that you were skipping our content because you didn't find it relevant. And glad that you actually didn't and found it was relevant, because that's the truth, folks. Don't skip anything because it will always be relevant. However, I promised a question. She also followed up. So she posted twice. First was the comment, and then she said, "Oh, and by the way, something that Anne-Marie had mentioned in the episode about lungs." And if you recall, we were talking about swimming a little bit, which is going to come up later on in this episode. And how, breathing is a benefit of swimming. And so that triggered this comment from Laura, where she said, "Okay, one more thing. If you can't tell, I loved this episode and was thinking about this on my entire run this morning." I don't know what morning that was or how long of a run. Hopefully it wasn't like a 3-hour run, because then I'd feel a little badly. You spent 3 hours puzzling this out. But Anne-Marie talked about lungs always being the weakest link for her. And I, Laura says, have always felt the same thing about myself, and chalked it up to not just having a big enough aerobic base of mileage, but hearing Anne-Marie say that, which she obviously has a huge aerobic base, 237 marathoner, things like that, makes me question that theory. Or she says maybe the theory still holds, but it's just that her lungs limit her at her level, my lungs limit me at my level, that kind of thing. So here's the question then. Any thoughts on the lung capacity situation? Is just raising aerobic capacity, more long, slow base mileage, things like that, the best way to work on the lungs? Or any other thoughts on how to specifically improve lungs when they are your limiting factor? So yes, we have some thoughts. So here's the main problem with something like this, is clearly it is a situation that's individual. So without knowing more than what you've shared, Laura, we're going to do our best to just share what we would do in your situation. So first, it could be something fitness related, but it doesn't sound like it. If you've been training for a period of time, and especially if you've been training at a high quality aerobic level for a sustained period of time, and you don't notice a difference in the issues with lung capacity. Now, I'm assuming as you get fitter, you do still run faster. And so you are improving your lung capacity, or at least you're improving the oxygen uptake in your muscles. So you are gaining aerobic capacity, which means some of it is beneficial. But if you're still the whole time feeling like it's always the lungs, it's always the breathing, here are a couple thoughts. First, posture matters. So we had Dave Hodgkinson on way back when, and he talked about you can run faster without actually trying harder by doing a few postural adjustments and changing some things in your general strength and mobility. And so that does matter, and it matters a lot with breathing. Where's your torso? Immediately, you just noticed both of us did that because I was going to say it, and so Andi knew it was coming because Andi's, okay. So if your shoulders go back, that's what you saw both of us do. That helps open up your lungs. And so you want that, certainly. You also want your head to be up, because if your chin's down, if you're looking down at the road, or even if your chin's down when you're looking up, that's constricting airflow. So you want your chin up as well. So chin up, shoulders back, and then you actually want your hip tilt to be somewhere in the middle of not straight up and down and not shoving back out, because either one of those is going to do something to constrict your diaphragm. So, of course, this all matters with your back strength and shoulder strength, your core strength, and all of those things too, because you can't hold a postural adjustment for long if you're weak in those areas. So there's a big, wide range of things that you could potentially look at there. However, it could also be things like nutrition related. We all know, or at least you will after I say this, that iron is one of the most valuable assets in moving the hemoglobin in your blood. And that's the oxygen carrying agent in your blood. And so iron makes that happen in your blood. And so, as you may already know, anemia, one of the main symptoms of anemia is shortness of breath. But you don't have to be anemic to still experience a degree of that if you just have low iron levels. Not terribly low, but just a little bit too low. So that could be a factor too. And there are several other nutritional elements that play a part. But we are not nutritionists, and we're not your doctor. So you should talk to someone before you just make dramatic changes there.
I was having some breathing issues due to anxiety, and I didn't realize that they were related. So there's also things like that can make a difference for you. So, and then also if your upper thoracic is tight, as Zach talked about, the structural aspect, but also if it's just tight, it makes it harder and actually uncomfortable sometimes to take a full breath. And if it's uncomfortable, your body's going to avoid it. And sometimes these things have been going on for so long that we don't notice them anymore. So, really see if there's any kind of upper thoracic issue going on.
The basketball tip, Andy's posted about that quite a bit. Lay on a basketball, specifically a basketball. The size and the shape tends to be valuable for this. Lay on it in different spots in your back and see if there are any tender spots, and then just kind of hold it there and take deep breaths.
Yeah, it's not like rolling.
Nope.
It's holding.
It's different. You're trying to actually release, especially like the ribs and things like that, thoracic. You're trying to release all of that. And so that can be a factor there too. And then, of course, there are things with something like sports-induced asthma, where you may not have any symptoms of asthma in any normal capacity, but you have a degree of sports-induced asthma that can just be a constant, slightly inhibiting factor. And we've seen that in runners quite a bit, especially when I was doing things like high school and such, where for the first time they're engaging in sustained aerobic activity and never knew that they had some kind of asthma until they do those things. But they don't know it's not normal because it's the first time doing them. And so many runners spend nearly their entire lives never finding out that they actually have sports-induced asthma, and a slight adjustment to a medication could wipe it out. So talk to the doctor about those kinds of things too. Well, there's a big answer for you. We don't necessarily always do that, but if you've got a question and you want an answer, we'll go as far as we can to help you out. Yeah. So post those comments, post those questions, blog, YouTube, any of the places you see our content.
So one of those places is Instagram, and I do want to plug one more time, maybe at the end of this episode too, the SB Socks giveaway, the compression giveaway. It's a really big one. There's a lot of prizes on the line here. There's a first, second, and third place prize. The first person gets 8 products of their choice from SB Socks.
And then has to immediately ship at least half of it to me.
Zach is trying to coerce everyone to give them some of the socks. And then there's 5 for the second place prize and 2 for the third place prize. So there's a lot of prizes on the line. So go ahead over to Instagram at AtoZrunning and you'll find us there. And the giveaway, it says it right there on the post, so you can sign up there.
Excellent. And you've heard us talk about SB Socks. They're high quality stuff. They're the kind of price point that you won't find anywhere else. And they wear well. We've had them for quite some time now, and they're going strong. So it's good.
Absolutely.
All right. So keep in mind, at the end of the episode, we're going to actually answer this week's question. So stick through the entire thing. This week's question: how can runners navigate? How should runners navigate the space between goals? And we're going to break down for you what it takes to go from one major goal to the next major goal, to go from one major goal to I have nothing on the horizon, I don't know what's coming next. All of these kinds of situations, we're going to break it down, talk about what training can look like and what maybe should or could change if something needs to. Yes. Stick around for that soon, but first, World of Running. All right, so next up, we've got Ironman, Florida.
Yes, you guys, I am so incredibly inspired, and I hope you all are too. 21-year-old Chris Nickick was the very first athlete with Down syndrome to complete an Ironman.
The full thing.
Ironman.
What's a full Iron? It's not 70.3, right? It's one. I don't know. I can't remember what what's the random distance number?
So the full distance is 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and the 26.2, the marathon in the end. He did all of that. And I should mention, he is continuing to make history. He was the first one to ever complete a triathlon as well. So he broke that, smashed that out of the water, and then now is going for what people thought was impossible for him to do, this Ironman. So
Mega
thank you
props
to Chris.
Yes,
for inspiring all of us.
It's great stuff. U.S. Trail Marathon Championships also happened, and we had some vested interest because of past guests.
Mm-hmm. So Brittany Charbonneau, she was on the podcast, and she was second place. And I do have a message from her, so let's take a listen.
Hey, everybody. Here I am post-nationals at home. I'm so tired. So I've just been lounging, and I have my toe socks on, and I have Neosporin on my knees from my fall, and I'm reading Green Lights from Matthew McConaughey. It was just such an epic race. So it just reminded me to just go for it. Go for the big things. Go for the things that maybe you don't think you can do or that you're ready for, or I don't know, just go for the big things and just have so much fun on your runs and keep playing, and then take a much needed break. I'm taking the rest of the year off from racing, and I'm so excited. So go have fun. I'm thinking about all of you, and
all right. So thank you, Brittany.
Yeah.
Incredible accomplishment. And we definitely enjoy whenever we get to know someone a little bit like this. We love seeing the successes. And that's, what is it? Trail Marathon Championships.
Yeah. Second place there. And if you didn't watch it, she fell asleep at the end there because she was just so tired. So Brittany, you deserve a nap. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you deserve a nap.
So it wasn't because she was bored by us. Or maybe it was both.
So that's really fun. Thank you, Brittany. And first place was Allie McLaughlin. And Wikipedia needs an update because they say she's a former trail marathoner, but she is not former at all. She was the world champion at the World Long Distance Mountain Championships in 2014, and she was part of the national team that won gold at the 2017 World Marathon Running Championships.
All right.
So she's got some accolades, and she obviously won this trail championship. So congrats to Allie.
So on the men's side, Adam Peterman, followed by Andy Wacker, were the 1 and 2. So good things all around. Trail championships, that's crazy people stuff. It's just, okay. Well, we want to just preface a couple of things that are up and coming here in the world of running, because there are still exciting things on the near horizon. First of all, next week, and this would be, depending on when you're listening to this, within a few days of when you're hearing us say this, is in Terre Haute, Indiana, which is known as Cross Country Town, USA. And I always have to look again because I never want to say it wrong, but it's Terre Haute. Okay, so Cross Country Town, USA, that's where they host the NCAA championships are basically there all the time, among many other championship level cross country races. They're doing one that's kind of like a all things, everyone. So it's high school cross country runners from all over the country. They've even got professional runners coming out and racing, not against the high schoolers. That might be a little mean. Yeah. But Paul Chalimo. Had him on recently. Yes. And of course, he's also important for other reasons too, not just because he came on our podcast.
Yeah, silver medal.
Things like Olympics. That. Yep. So he's going to be racing. That's his season opener. And by season, we mean basically it's the first time he's racing in quite some time.
Yeah.
And he's trying to gear himself up for 2021 Tokyo. Mm-hmm. And in the process, it's going to start on the grass in a cross-country race, cool. Which he's widely successful in cross country. So this is a good thing for him too. Mm-hmm. And some crazy fast high schoolers I mentioned from all over the country. And so, you don't get these kinds of things super often where you get Californians running against Wyomingians and anyone else across the country. So it's going to be really exciting to see that. All right. final note is in Valencia, Spain, which that should sound familiar because that's where all of the super fast track records were all broken not terribly long ago. Well, they're doing it again, this time in the marathon and half marathon. We'll see how fast these races end up being. But they will have on December 6th an elite-only marathon, half marathon, and it's got some serious headliners. Basically, it's like all the fast people internationally, the fast distance runners, have just been hanging out in Europe for a while and just racing each other. And so they're coming back together again, and it's a lot of the same names. Men's marathon, we've got Birhanu Legacy, who is the third fastest all-time marathoner. He's run 2:02:48.
Wow.
So yeah, he's in the the world class. I feel badly just saying that. Okay, he's great. Lalisa De Sisa, who is a defending world champion in the half marathon, also an Olympic bronze or silver medalist, I can't quite recall now, from Rio. And then in the women's marathon, Rudy Aga and Birhani Dibaba, who have both run 18:30-something, 2:18:30-something. And then Perez Jepchirchir, who was the world half marathon champion from just a while back. And she's run like 2:23 or so, but she's clearly in better shape after that world half. And that was a women's only record and all of those things too. So she'll be up there. That'll be exciting. America has Jordan Hesse running.
Yeah.
So USA actually has someone in Europe to race, which is always fun. And she hasn't raced in quite some time.
Yeah.
So
Since the Olympic trials?
Might be.
Maybe?
Might be. I don't know for sure. We haven't necessarily tracked closely.
We'll put it in the blog
but-
post. I'll double check that.
And then in the men's half marathon, we've got Ronex Kipruto, who is the world record holder in the road 10K and has not run a half marathon before. So this will be his debut.
Wow.
Everyone's excited what he's going to do out there. He's running against Jacob Kiplimo, defending world champ half marathon. And that was really exciting. Jacob Kiplimo, if you recall, is the young guy. He's like 19. Well, he's probably 20 now. I can't remember when his birthday was supposed to be here. But so he's clearly got it done in a half marathon. He's coming again. And then Kibiwat Candy of Kenya, who was second to Jacob Kiplimo in the world half champs. So it's just like all these guys are just coming back together again. And they're racing again. It's going to be really exciting. In the women's half, Letesenbet Gidey, the new world 5K record holder from that Valencia track meet. And she's racing against Ginsebi Dibaba, who is the world record holder in the 1500.
It's going to be epic showdown, you guys.
And neither of them have run a half marathon before, so those are debuts, which is just makes it that much more fun.
That is exciting.
Yes. And then, of course, USA has one in the half as well, and that's Emily Sisson, who she's run to 107:30, and that's good for like a few seconds off the American record, which Molly Huddle holds. And so certainly if she's fit, you know that she's going to be up there with these kinds of athletes too.
Exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to it.
I am as well.
We'll keep you updated.
So the question for this episode then, as noted, is how should runners navigate the space between goals? And what we're talking about that is basically the concept of you finish something like a race or a big goal or a big training season or cycle. Everyone uses different words to describe those things, but season, cycle, goal, whatever it is. You complete one and you've got the next one. Maybe you have it way down the road. Maybe it's something immediate. Maybe you don't have a next goal. What does that period of time look like, whatever your situation?
So there are 4 things that we're going to be talking about today. One is aerobic conditioning and what you can do between cycles or goals with aerobic conditioning. The second is working on our weaknesses. Third is having fun. And fourth is getting maybe away from running for a bit,
if you potentially need a break. So certainly whenever you're thinking about these kinds of things, we want to couch the whole thing under the idea that there's a bigger vision beneath all of it. It's not just about whatever the immediate goal is in terms of running. And for some of us, that is the driving factor. But in any case, I always love the question, and I did this with Andi the other day on a run, and she really enjoyed it. She was like, this is really exciting for me. And I thought that was really strange because all we were doing was just talking about her running goals. But so it starts with the question of what's the most important thing for you with running in general, period. And that's, a big objective. And so then that usually kind of feeds into like general life important goals or objectives and such too. So Andy's going to get into that a little bit later, but that's a guiding factor that we should always be thinking about with this kind of stuff. And then we'll try to get practical here with a few examples. So first, as Andy noted, general sound aerobic conditioning is a great way to use the time between goals. So let's think about you finish a race or a season and you probably should take a little bit of time off. We'll get into more of the why in a different one in a moment. But then when you're not necessarily gearing up for another goal, or you have another goal that's down the road, you can still train in an aerobic sense at a high quality level that is valuable. And the reason why it's valuable is really twofold. One is that you can do aerobic conditioning almost indefinitely. So the idea here is, let's say you have 50 weeks. That's a long period of time. It's almost a year, Andy. 52 weeks being a year. You have 50 weeks. I should not patronize you. I'm sorry. She knows this. And so you're not going to do like an orchestrated training block that's 50 weeks long. That's too long. However, you may still spend 20 some weeks of that just doing aerobic conditioning. And that is actually something you can do, like physiologically speaking. Mm-hmm. And more specifically, the rule here is that in general, there is no ceiling to how well you can develop your aerobic capacity. So of course, the fitter you get, the more incremental or microscopic the gains become. And that is true. You get to a point where it's kind of like you're not going to get much more out of it week by week, but you can still get some out of it. And so there is this idea that you can just do that forever. And I think part of the reason why that's okay is because if you're doing a good sound aerobic training block, you can also jump in races. You certainly can. You're not going to be racing at your highest capacity, but you shouldn't be trying to do that anyway at that time. So feel free to spend as much time as you want just doing general aerobic conditioning, jump into some races when they come up, and then just keep the good work going. And then when that goal it starts to near, then you start to orient the training in a very specific way toward that goal. Mm-hmm. That's one.
The second one is focusing on weaknesses. And I feel like a hypocrite sharing this one because I have just recently been like thrown into the necessity of focusing on weaknesses due to, pregnancy, hip labrum tears, and so on and so forth. But I'm telling all of you, focusing on weaknesses is a great thing to do in between cycles to prepare you for the upcoming season that you might be hoping for. And one of the reasons for that is that you can build habits with maybe more energy when you're not in the middle of a really hard training block.
That's a good reason.
Yeah. And once that habit is formed and you bring that into your next cycle or season, it's a habit. And habits don't use as much energy, like actual energy. So that's the benefit of doing it in your in-between time.
And in working with Adam Homolka of Endurance Rehabilitation and Athletics, Adam, our physical therapist, has often, throughout this period that I've worked with him, taken some of this time that's kind of between things and said, okay, so there's nothing immediately pressing. Let's talk about why you've had certain problems in the last year. And let's try to figure out if there aren't some things we can do to shore it all up and just make it reinforced so that the next time you hit things hard, you don't have that same nagging hamstring that's just always tight and all that kind of stuff. And to his credit, Adam is excellent at identifying those kinds of things. And working with a professional always helps with this kind of stuff. But I've had issues like I had a torn hamstring that plagued me for almost 2 years. It does not anymore. And we spent a lot of time trying to address that. And that's just one example, certainly. And there's some injuries that, if you've had some major Achilles problems, you probably will never fully shake them, just the nature of how the Achilles is. Hip labrum tears don't necessarily fully heal. Mm-hmm. So those kinds of things, you might not be able to just get rid of it. But yeah, shore it up. Get yourself better, stronger, ready for the next round.
So are you saying, Zach, that maybe if running is not our job, that it'd be a good idea if we have an injury to give ourselves a time between seasons instead of going from one season to the next right away, that we should maybe take a month or two to get ourselves together?
Well, that is not what I was saying, but that is also a good idea. So yeah, and that's in general, when you need to focus on a problem, especially if it's like an injury or something, you're going to need to take some time away or downtime for it to heal or fully rehabilitate too, potentially. So that's a part of that as well. So number 3 is having some fun.
I feel like it's funny that Zach's saying this.
It is, because I don't really ever feel the need to have fun.
It's not like he's giggling before workouts or anything.
Okay, so Andy's going to give some examples of things here, and I'll basically roll my eyes the entire time. Just keep them rolling in circles the whole time. But before she does that, I do just want to mention that for me, when I think about like the idea of what's fun and running, for me, what makes running fun or funnest is the moment where it's like I feel like the fitness I was trying to accomplish, like I've got it, and then I can just go out and race. And that period of time where you can just race and feel fast is what I love. Mm-hmm. Anything else that people call fun and running, I don't know.
So I might be more like the rest of you who enjoy running for the sake of running and also love to like add extra things into our running to make it fun too. So there was an episode that we had not too long ago, had to do with COVID. We talked about finding community and motivation while social distancing, but a lot of these things apply to between cycles as well. And this one I love. It's run creatively. Jarek Yoon, he told us that he makes Strava art to run creatively. And we have a blog post now because it was just such a great idea. And I started doing it. Other people started doing it that heard the episode. So we wrote a post called How to Make Strava Art. And it's actually our best blog post out there in the world.
I feel like if any of you,
the web, the World Wide Web,
can make a recognizable Baby Yoda, we might send you something in the mail.
Yes.
If you can make it and then show it to us somehow.
We'll send you something.
We might send you something in the mail.
Do a Baby Yoda. We'll
Gotta
send you
be Baby
something.
Yoda. None of that real adult Yoda stuff.
Okay. Well, that's going to be kind of hard. All right. Challenge is out there. The challenge is out there. Speaking of challenge, running a challenge is the next one. Benjamin Murray told us that he does the Garmin Connect challenges. And there are a lot of challenges out there. I mean,
Strava has like 1.5 billion of them.
1.5 billion.
They're basically just challenge trolling you all day long.
That's so funny. But another thing that I've seen people do that I think is really clever is that when people are just trying to get this aerobic base that we're talking about, like keep that aerobic conditioning going, they're doing relays amongst one another. But then also I've heard of families doing them like, we're going to run all the way to Colorado as a family, and they tally up all of their miles. And I thought that was...
Wait, but they don't actually run to Colorado?
No, they don't actually run to Colorado.
That makes no sense. If you're going to run to Colorado, run to Colorado.
He's such a logical...
Otherwise, it's just saying we're going to run 2,000 miles.
They have a map. Yeah, that's what they're doing. Yeah, so they have a map, but it like shows their distance on a map.
I don't play that game.
I think it's super cool.
But it's just pretend. You're just pretending to run to Colorado. Just go run to Colorado. Bring some tents, bring a van, and one person runs at a time and run to Colorado.
Oh, goodness.
And then maybe drive back.
So something else, then we're moving on. This is something that Zach would be really into, actually. And that's using aerobic conditioning to maybe pace somebody. So let's say that you're not at your peak fitness. You're not really interested in racing. If you're not at your peak fitness, then maybe you'd want to pace somebody if you have the capacity to do so.
I have done this very rarely. There haven't been a lot of instances where I've been able to kind of like protractedly pace someone, but I traveled with a friend to the UP once, and he was trying to Boston qualify, and I ran 21 of his 26 miles in the marathon. It was hard, but we did it.
It's a lot of miles.
He did run the time, but he missed the cutoff, so he didn't end up getting. Yeah. Sorry, Josh.
So pacing is something that you could do, and that's benefiting someone else, being a great community member. And then our brother-in-law George, he picked up swimming, which then got him thinking about triathlons.
Why not?
Which then turned into him winning his first ever sprint try.
Because people do that.
I guess. I don't know. He does that. But like finding something else that you're doing and kind of chasing after something new that could be any number of things. And then... yeah, I think that Zach has one more thing.
Oh, yeah. So it not just outside of the sport, but also within the sport. So this is something that I like to do, and Andy's doing currently, especially so marathoners in general, you often find yourself not wanting to run marathons constantly. Like for a little while here, I don't want to run any marathons. And so that's a great time to do something like I'll jump in another 5K. I haven't done that in a while. Or like I'll run a mile and see how fast I can get my mile time and spend like 6 months preparing for that, or an 800, something crazy. It's still running. But, road runners, I want to jump on the trails like Brittany Charbonneau. And do crazy things like win all the trail championships everywhere. And so all of the kind of variations of what you can do within running, which there are so many, provide opportunity for having fun, but not having to focus on the same thing you've been focusing on.
That's what I'm doing right now. So I'm looking for shorter distances this winter.
And really hoping that some indoor track races happen.
Yes,
so we can actually,
fabulous.
In Michigan in the winter, there's not really any way else to run. Mm-hmm. So, Andi, what's the is it number 4? We got the fourth one.
So sometimes we need some distance from the sport entirely. And Zach is a great example of this. You took a lot of time off after the marathon and did something else.
Yeah, I basically hate running every time I do a marathon and hate running for a month or
goodness.
2 easily.
He's so dramatic.
No, I'm not dramatic. I'm just simply realistic. When you run a marathon, you can't possibly, if you run it at the highest possible caliber that you're trying to get from your body, you're going to ruin your body, at least for a brief period of time, because that's what happens when you run that hard for that long. So as a consequence, I find myself not wanting to do anything like that, remotely close to that, for a while. And I do. So I take substantial amounts of time off running.
Yeah. And one of the things, one of the reasons that we need this is for that important mental break, that mental recovery. And we spoke about that very briefly on our episode last week with recovery and why it matters with Anne-Marie Kirkpatrick. So you might want to check that one out because that's all about recovery, and you'll want to do a lot of those things during your time down too. So some good ideas from there. If it's not a physical thing, which it can be, burnout, we'll talk about that in a moment, but the mental side of it, and I think that's actually a greater degree of why I take so much time away after the marathon, is because for some reason the marathon shreds me mentally. And makes it just a bad taste in my mouth about running. And I know I'm not the only person out there, and some don't experience that at all, and others are like, yeah, I agree with you. And so that mental side of it. But what happens is by taking the mental break, I'm also getting the physical break that I need too. So but potential burnout. Yeah. So there is mental burnout because it is a lot of energy and mindset. And if you're doing all the recovery things and you're doing your drills and you're doing your PT and you're running all the miles, there's a lot there. And sometimes you just need a break, bake a pie.
What?
Do something else. But then there's
also... not written down here anywhere. Bake a pie? What are you talking about?
Chelsea of May's Menu has me all inspired to do all kinds of things, but I definitely want to do that. She had a live class.
Salads with organic kale.
No, she has all the good stuff like pie.
Raw spinach.
It's so good for you too, though.
That's what she keeps telling me.
Balance. So then there's burnout that's physical, and there's like chronic fatigue, deficiencies that happen, sleep loss, just a general debt in a lot of areas that can cause you to have physical burnout. And it's important that even before you get to that point, like try not to discover that point. Yep. Maybe take a break before you find the edge. And I know a lot of us play with that because we want to reach our potential, right? We're driven. But there are times that your body starts giving these alerts before the burnout happens. So listen to those and address them because we don't want burnout.
Yeah. And so one of the things that really actually helps with that is doing a different kind of physical activity, even so dramatically different that it's not even really related to running. So as an example, what does Zach like to do when in this period, this dark period that I like to refer to it as my running funk? So when I'm in my despairing times, what is it that I like to do? And I'm curious if any of you might be able to guess this before I say it. And now you've had your time. So certainly lots of biking, which some of you already knew that. But I do really enjoy biking, and I never did any serious amount of cycling until like 4 years ago when I first ran a marathon. 5 years ago, 2015, ran my first marathon and thought, I'm done running forever. And so then I figured I needed something else to occupy my energy. Energy is the wrong thing. I needed something else to give me an excuse to get away from people, so I could isolate but have it be a reasonable excuse. So biking became that thing, and I loved it, especially because I got on like one of those Zwift things, the virtual stuff, and then got really competitive. And I tend to get really competitive everything I do, but because I could actually compete against other people from my basement in the winter in Michigan, it was awesome.
Yeah,
it's great. And I have never stopped doing that. Well, I don't do it in my running season cycles, but I do come back to it quite frequently, and I enjoy it.
After marathons.
But guess what number 2 is? No one's going to guess this one, so I'm just going to say it. Heavy bag hitting.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I got a heavy bag, one of the lightweight ones because, a heavyweight one would break my body. But I got a lightweight heavy bag, and I go down there and I just like tear away at that thing, and it's great. It's awesome. I almost tore my shoulders out of their sockets though because I didn't understand that, just like running, you got to ease into things. So I do enjoy that. And the perks of that is it has nothing to do with my legs. It's core and arms and shoulders, which is great because I never do anything with my arms and shoulders otherwise. So that was really fun. And then I do like to do yoga. So many of you also like to have some kind of really relaxing, serene activity. And that's a great thing to occupy these periods where you're feeling burnt out from other things. One thing though that I learned when we were talking with Phil Wharton, and he's talking about how yoga, so a lot of people use yoga to gain mobility. And he said when he was spending time with some yogis and learning more about the practice and talking with them and such, he realized that they were having problems because their bodies were getting locked up and immobile because they were doing so much yoga and not much of anything else.
And we're activating.
Yeah,
so
he taught them some of his active flexibility stuff, and it helped their yoga practice because, as he told us, as it so happens, you need to be mobile to better do yoga. And so properly mobilized. So that's I learned that I'm going to be able to do that better in the future.
And we should put this little caveat. I mean, some of you guys have heard this, that if you're doing these long holds and long stretches, it's better to do that when you're not running than when you're in a training cycle, because you don't want that stretch reflex.
It inhibits the adaptations you're going to gain from your actual running training. Not greatly, but certainly enough that it prolongs your fitness
sometimes
gains.
You need it, sometimes you need it, but you might not want to do it every day.
So if your physical therapist says you need to do some sustained stretching to elongate muscle in somewhere, then do what your physical therapist is telling you to do. But in most instances, that's not general best practice. Okay, now I do want to cover what are the best non-running cross-training activities. So if you're saying to yourself, I need some time away, but I don't want my time away to ruin my chances of coming back in decent fitness, then there are some relatively good options. Every runner, Andy's going to talk about this, every runner is always afraid of losing fitness. All right, cross-country skiing, number 1 on the list. Okay, so I've done this. I did the research into someone else's research about the Olympics and Olympic athletes, so the top-tier athletes, world-class in the sports. And it just so happens that cross-country skiers across the board, on average, have the highest aerobic capacity and the highest VO2 max of any other athlete.
Wow.
Yeah, we're talking about like
something.
Eliud Kipchoge versus the top cross country, some guy from Norway. And the guy from Norway probably has higher aerobic capacity. And now, so they've done the studies. They know that specifically this is true. The question of why is a little bit more nuanced, but whatever the case may be, we know that cross-country skiing is largely a functional movement similar to running with no impact, which is greatly beneficial. So you're working a lot of the same motion patterns, which is huge, but also it's a full body thing because you've got your arms and your back and your core. The amount of core work you're doing is way more than running, which is going to benefit you when you come back to running. But it doesn't work your arms as like you're building this huge muscle mass in your arms either. Look at world-class cross-country skiers. They're not ripped bodybuilders by any means. So that's a great one. I see no downsides except it costs a lot of money and it has to be cold and snowy to do it. So all of you Southern Californianers, you should move out of California for other reasons anyway. So you might as well find a cold mountain somewhere to spend the winter and you can do lots of cross-country skiing. Now, biking. I do not feel that biking is the greatest activity for runners, but it has a lot of conveniences, which gives it some pros. No impact, which is lovely. So if you have some kind of problem or injury thing, that's not a problem. It's great for rehabilitation in that sense. Also, it's very accessible because you can put a bike on any road and you can put a bike in your basement. And it can be the same bike that you put on the road and in your basement. And so that's a lovely thing if you have a trainer or access to a trainer. If done properly, it can be a great aerobic activity. However, if done improperly, cons of biking is that it is largely it gets into anaerobic stuff a lot more easily and more often than running does, and it builds muscle mass more than running does and causes a lot of immobility because think about it, you're just hunched over a bike, barely moving anything except your legs the entire time. So no core activation and a lot of immobility in your hips because of the nature of the movement patterns and your ankles. So if you're going to bike, and if you're going to bike for a long period of time, be aware of the consequences there and spend some time working on the things that aren't being worked on with the bike. Now, I don't want to spend any amount of time talking about swimming because that is a horrible thing for me to talk about.
Probably one of the better options, actually.
It is, in fact, a good option.
It's a great
if you're physically able to do it and you
don't
won't
sink to
drown.
the bottom.
So if it's not in a danger to your health and life. So the pros of swimming, certainly it's a good respiratory and cardio work. Cons, it's not functionally the same kind of movement as running, and so you're not necessarily benefiting the muscles in the same way you're going to need them. But because it's a full body recruitment kind of thing, it has some general advantages as well with that. You're moving a lot of things at the same time. And it's really gentle. It's just really gentle on your body. And many people describe it as a serene thing, although I am in a constant state of panic anytime I touch the water. So it's not serene for me.
Oh, that's a good one. I like it.
Wait,
I think I might try that. No, for me. I'm not thinking about how you drown.
Anne-Marie thinks that I should do it.
Yeah.
She clearly has a death wish on me.
No, that was Anne. Margs and marathons.
No, that was Anne-Marie.
They both do
now
swimming.
We're debating.
They actually both do
no,
swimming.
but which one said that I should do it? It was Anne-Marie.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
so
you're right.
All of those things are we're going to summarize that in a moment, but Andy has some clarity to provide on the bigger picture.
So bigger picture stuff. Creating and maintaining objectives that will last between cycles. And really, hopefully, many of you want to be lifelong runners. So there is going to come a time when maybe you can't PR for like your lifetime PR. You can always do decade PRs. I'm all about that. But there are some objectives that you can hold on to. And why do I bring this up? Because I think a lot of us will rush back into a training cycle because we're afraid. We're afraid to lose fitness. We're afraid we're not going to reach our big goal or maybe our dream goal if we take time off. And first of all, our bodies do need rest and recovery, even between cycles. But second, I think it's good for us to see ourselves as lifelong runners, which would mean that we need to have these periods of life that we're kind of getting our act together. So these are some of the objectives that I have, and processing life, enjoying the outdoors, praying, connecting with friends, feeling strong, continuous improvement, discovering myself, and achieving difficult tasks. Now, all these things that I just listed, I can do if I get injured or if running is taken away from me tragically. So it's always good to have running maybe fulfill a need that you can fulfill another way, if that makes sense, just in case you do have those times. And I know it's helped me quite a bit to see these objectives and give me a bigger picture.
Like my need for isolation and withdrawal to get away from other human beings. I can do that in other ways. It doesn't have to be running. So I can fulfill that need.
Oh, dear.
And lots of physical
You can never
activities.
get away from me. Ha ha.
Well, except for when I go for a run.
That's true.
I just happen to accidentally get
that's
lost
why he's
the other
faster,
day.
guys.
I didn't
He's
intend
motivated.
to run 3 hours. That was not on purpose. So really, back to the question then, how should runners navigate the space between goals? And we're going to try to address, I guess, 4 situations here in the actual tangible answer. We gave you kind of those 4 general concepts. Let's put it into a specific situation. And if this doesn't capture exactly your situation, then send us a note, because we actually want to know specifically what is it that you're dealing with this thing. And maybe we can offer a thought to that, or on air, we can address your thought there too. So if you are loving running and you've got something big on the horizon that's coming up, so you just finished a big goal, but you got another big goal coming up, which many of you are in that kind of situation where it's like a race was canceled, but it's been rescheduled, and now that's out on the horizon, that kind of thing. So if you're in that situation, then you've got to use this time to do what you can to make sure that when you start gearing up for that big goal, that you're ready to roar. And so that means high quality aerobic training, not something super aggressive and such, but just quality aerobic training, and definitely spend some time addressing any weaknesses, making sure that you're shoring yourself up. Also, number 2 here, if you're loving the running right now but don't have anything on the horizon in general, this is a good time to do some quality aerobic training, but also to find some races, jump in some stuff, just keep it casual and keep it fun, and set yourself up for when you think, okay, here's a race I definitely want to focus on and gear up for. Then you've done some of this base work that's really going to help set you up for when you're ready to do that. If you're enjoying running, number 3 here, but you want to change things up, I want to do something different. That's what we were talking about with just have some fun with it a little bit. take a different track in your event focus, mile, marathon, any of that kind of thing. But also like trails instead of roads, something like that. Change it up a little bit. And then fourth, if you're hating running and need something different, if you're burnt out, if you're mentally shaken, if you're in the marathon funk, as I often am, that's when you do something different. Find a different activity, find a different way to spend your time that still helps satisfy some of those fundamental objectives, as Andi was saying. And so it addresses those things, but can give you some space away from running. However, I do want to mention, as Dathan shared with us, great advice from episode 7, way back when, the idea of set yourself a time limit. So if I'm going to take some space away from running, I'm going to say, okay, in 1 week, I'm going to come back to thinking about this and decide what I'm going to do then, or 1 month or 2 months. And so give yourself a time limit. And after that time limit, then you can say, okay, now I'm going to think about it again. And if you're not ready, give yourself another time limit. It's great.
Yeah.
Great advice.
I love it. Good stuff. Well, if you guys have any thoughts about the episode, like Zach said, please let us know. We've been getting some great feedback. We've had a lot of great conversations with other runners, and that's what A to Z is about. It's about the community. It's about information. It's about inspiration and helping you thrive. And to do that, we can help each other by getting better. So finally, I want to remind you of the giveaway. Gotta remind you of it because Zach wants to win it and he can't. So we want you to, one of our listeners to win, because we have some followers on Instagram and we want you, our listeners, to be the ones to win these.
And those of you that I was talking to about this, our deal still holds. So if you win, I get half of it.
No.
What? No,
He's
this
not
is under
doing
the table.
shady deals. Oh, goodness.
I won't tell if you won't tell.
Well, thanks for joining us, and until next week.